All right, I have 6 o'clock. Welcome everyone to our March the 8th, 2021 special called work session. I now would like to, I'm calling the meeting to order and we need approval of the agenda as submitted. Do we have a motion, please?
I make a motion that we approve the meeting agenda as submitted.
Okay, you guys, your
Second.
mutes are on.
Second.
Glenn, would you like to make the motion to approve
No,
the
I second.
agenda as submitted?
Troy made the motion. I second it.
I can't hear you, Glenn.
You sure you can't hear me?
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I can hear Mr. Ball. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can't hear anybody. Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. Troy, why don't you make the motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve of the meeting
No
agenda
audio.
as submitted.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we accept the agenda, approval of the agenda as submitted. We need a second, please. You can wave your hand or say aye. Can we have a second by Mr. Ball? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Troy, did you get it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the motion passes. Brian, I know you're on. I'm very concerned we're not getting, is it me that's not getting audio?
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's just you because we can hear you.
As long as you
and we
all can hear me.
everybody else.
That'll work. Let me just check my, oh, turn your sound up, Steve. Got it. Technology, I hate it. Okay, so we got through this part. So,
Now can you hear me?
I hear you.
Oh.
Sorry about that, you all. Last meeting, we had to turn the sound down. I just never turned it back up. So anyways, thank you all. Item number 3 is approving the meeting minutes. Can we have a motion, please?
I make a motion that we approve of the 2/8/21, 2/17/21, and the 2/25/21 board meetings as submitted.
Okay, we need a
Second.
second. And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to approve the 2/8, the 2/17, and the 2/25/21 board meeting minutes as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, so number 4, I believe, Ms. Adderley, we're going to be hearing from you about the Diversity Council update. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Is Mr. Sanfield not going to be here tonight?
Well, he is actually on his way. He got stuck in a meeting in Louisville and he just sent me a text. He's on his way. So
Okay.
I think it's up to you now.
Oh, that's fine. I just know that we had our last meeting at the end of February, and it was a very compelling, powerful meeting. And I know he had some strong feelings about it, so I'm sure he would have something to say if he were here. So as you all know, the district has partnered with Dr. Roger Cleveland from Eastern Kentucky University and Millennium Learning Concepts to provide our staff with some support when it comes to implicit bias. All of our staff have had training on implicit bias at this point. And you know, his firm did the equity desk audit of our district, if you remember that. The next step typically is for his team to come in and do a culture survey with students, parents, and staff. But because of COVID, he didn't feel like now was the best time to do a culture survey. So we brainstormed ways in which he could support us outside of that. And once we get back to some normalcy, then we'll do the culture survey. And then after that, his team comes in and does some classroom observations and interviews with students and teachers and parents and things like that. But before we can get to that, well, Ernest is here too. Sorry, Ernest. There he is. Ernest might have something to say about it too. He's on the council as well. So Dr. Cleveland agreed to partner with our Diversity and Equity Council to kind of help us get our feet under us because none of us have ever done this before. So our February meeting, he was able to get Vince Maddox from Fayette County, who was very instrumental in starting the Equity Council in Fayette County, and Roy Woods, who was the chairperson of the Equity Council in Fayette County for quite a few years, I believe. And they came and spoke to us about just where we need to go and what we need to do as far as like how the Fayette County Council was formed and how members got on the council. Their membership was comprised solely of community members. There were no staff members, which we're not in a place where we can do that right now, but it was also on an application basis, which we're not in a place where we can do that right now either, but we hope that be the plan later. And they also, their meetings were televised, public for people to watch, which is a wonderful idea too. But like, we have to go back to, and what they're going to help us with, they're coming to our meeting this month too, which is tentatively scheduled for March 17th. They're going to help us lay the groundwork and the policy pieces, the bylaws and things like that, that we aren't, as a council, Ernest, speak up if you agree or disagree, just aren't comfortable doing that without some guidance. So they were very helpful in our last meeting and giving us a direction.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to add that if you hadn't mentioned it already, so, but you did, so. Yeah, bylaws and groundwork and the whys and the wheres and the struggles they had in the beginning, and them sharing with us that, it's going to be tough in the beginning, but as the groundwork is laid, it will become more clear what your purpose is and which direction you want to go in. So I think it was very, very helpful.
And it was Ernest and I talked afterwards, and I talked to several members afterwards. It was very, very empowering, and we kind of know where we need to go now, but it's going to be a ton of work. And luckily we have a council they're all good with putting in the work. So they're there to stay and for the long haul. They've been at every meeting on every Wednesday night. This one lasted, I think, 2 hours or more, did it, Ernest?
Yeah, it was over 2 hours.
Yeah. So
I think a lot of people were willing to go longer, but we had a lot of good conversations and discussions there. So
yeah, and Dr. Cleveland wants to keep us on a tight,
yes.
Here are our norms. This is how long we want to stay. This is how long we're going to stay. So he's very good at keeping it moving and productive. So he's going to help us from here on out. And I had asked him to be here tonight, but he is actually attending a board meeting for a district in North Carolina tonight that he's helping with the same thing. So he couldn't be here with us tonight.
Does anybody on the board have any comments or they would like to make concerning the Equity Council, Diversity Council? Sherry, I think you all are doing fantastic work. To be able to get people to stay at a meeting for a couple hours voluntarily is pretty good. I mean, our situation here is y'all are a captive audience, so we have to stay. But to be able to do that, to have folks be there voluntarily is pretty amazing. And I have to applaud you all for wanting to bring in the bylaws, and that's hard work because it may fit in one district doesn't mean it's going to fit in this district, and you're going to be, at least you're not going to have to make it up from scratch, so you'll have an outline. So it's Wednesday the 17th is the next meeting.
Yes, that's when Dr. Cleveland's calendar was free.
Okay, and what time will it start?
6:30.
6:30. Okay. All right. Just in case somebody wants to know. Ernst, do you have anything else you want to add at this point? Okay. Ms. Satterley, thank you so much for the hard work and something else that another hat you get to wear, but you wear it well. So thank you. Okay, let's move down to board approval of the contract on sale of this to the city with the city of Danville regarding the former Jenny Rogers property. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Pennington at this point.
Can you hear me okay now?
I got it.
Okay. I emailed earlier today a proposed board order. And this basically is just, obviously you've accepted the bid from the city. And this is approving the sale of the property formally to the city of Danville for $637,000 and authorizing the superintendent to sign the contract of sale, which of course will continue to be contingent upon KDE approval. So just for background, if I'm not mistaken, the city has it on its agenda tonight to approve the actual contract of sale. And if that in fact occurs, then as early as tomorrow, we would email that contract, the board resolution you're going to approve in a minute, I hope, and the appraisal and a couple of other documents to KDE. And then we will await its final approval. And as soon as we receive that, we'll be ready to close on the transaction. So the board order tonight is just approving the actual contract. And then once we receive KDE approval, final approval, then this resolution authorizes Dr. McDonald to attend the closing, sign the deed, and close the deal.
Oh. Okay, does anybody have any comments or concerns with this? It seems to be a pretty easy process, and Vince, we thank you for taking care of the getting the paperwork put together. And is this something I need to sign in the morning? Is that correct?
That's correct. That would be great.
All right, I'll be there about 9 o'clock. Does that work for you, Teresa? Okay. All right.
Awesome.
So I'll get that taken care of, and then we'll get it in your hands.
We'll email it to KDE tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds great. All right. So we need a motion to approve the board order.
I make a motion to approve contract of sale with the city of Danville regarding former Jenny Rogers property as submitted.
Second motion.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. And again, thank you, Vince, for all the work. And this seems to be moving right along, which is.
Thank you. I think we're on the right track. And again, as soon as KDE approves it, we'll be ready to close.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Bait roof repair quote. Dr. McDonald, is Mr. Dunn going to comment on this? Okay.
Yes, it's from the WTI. It's a company that I think they've been involved with the roofing project or the roof with Bait all along. From Ken Arrington, was made out in back in May, and I think it's been an ongoing problem with the roof leak, and it's gotten a little worse here lately. So, but they've made their proposal for $13,800, and then goes in detail on the proposal what the work's going to be done and the location. If you look at, you can see that in the pictures on the roof, from the aerial shot of the roof, and then there's a more close up to the exact location on where the work's going to be done to make those repairs for on the roof there. I think it's pretty straightforward and cut and dry. So what they're going to do and where it is. So
when possibly would they be able to start on the work, Mr. Dunn?
I have not been in contact with him, but I think that once it's approved, we'll start the process as soon as possible.
I believe according to Mr. McKinney, they can start fairly quickly once it's approved. Now, if that's 2 days or a week and a half, it's, but still fairly quickly to move forward. Of course, with spring, we have a lot of rain, so this is something that, and this has been a leak that has, it's steadily getting worse over time. So moving into spring showers is going to cause some pretty significant problems.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Anybody on the board have any comments or concerns on this? Okay, seeing there are none. Dr. McDonald, is this something you want us to approve tonight?
That would be helpful if we can, get moving on these repairs. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right.
And
We need
Mr. Beck,
someone to make a motion. Go ahead, Mrs. Stevens, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get my mute off fast enough. I just wanted to ask, what kinds of things are they going to do this time that they haven't done before?
So, and Mr. Dunn can maybe talk to this more, because I know Mr. McKinney has been the primary contact on this, but before has been, to my understanding, just patchwork, and even patchwork maybe on the inside too. This is going to be a complete repair fix of that area versus a patch. So, which is one
Yes.
why the cost is a little higher.
And did they do any warranty on that work? I mean, if they fix it now, is it warranted for a year, or is that, I was trying to see if that was in the contract, and it may have been, I could have missed it.
Yeah, I don't have the exact timeline in front of me. Mr. Dunn, do you have that, or the exact?
I'm looking through it now, and it doesn't have listed how long the warranty is, but we'll be sure to get that confirmed once we
Before we
start
start
to move forward.
work.
Yes.
I also text Mr. McKinney to see if he had the exact timeline on that.
Okay. Well, I don't think that's an issue to go on and get it started, but it'd really be nice to know if they do back it up with a warranty for 90 days, a year.
Yeah, I do know there's one in there, and talking with Mr. McKinney, but I didn't get in the exact frame on that, but I can find out from him exactly how long it was.
Okay, that'll work. And if you wouldn't mind, just email the board on that conclusion, which would be great.
We will.
Okay, so we need to go ahead and get an approval on this. So we need a motion, please.
I make a motion that we approve the roof repair of Bait Middle School as presented for $13,800.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye or wave your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing there are none, the motion carries. That'll be good. We can get started and get that fixed. Okay, let's go down to item 7, which is revised job description for the school psychologist. Mrs. Ray, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, you guys have a copy of this in the agenda. I just updated it to be more reflective of their current duties. It's been a while since we've had to post this position, and we are going to have a retirement this year. So I needed to make sure that the job description was up to date. So I'm happy to go over any additions or changes with you if you have any questions.
Well, if you want to point out just for the public exactly what changes are there.
Okay, the previous description stated that they would provide counseling services, and our school psychologists don't do that. Our school counselors handle that, and our wellness counselor handles the counseling aspect of it. So we revised that to say, provide assistance to staff in the design and implementation of appropriate interventions and accommodations for students, because that is a big part of their job, and that wasn't reflected in the previous description. And the second part that we revised was parent counseling and training. They don't do that, but they do coordinate and collaborate with a range of individuals and agencies to promote and provide comprehensive services to students and families. which that's more reflective of what they actually do for our students and their families. And then we also added proficiently use technology to communicate, compile reports, and collect data. This year and last year is more important than ever. We've really had to step up our game with utilization of technology. And I will say, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, we've had really good response to having our ARC meetings virtually. Parents have been very responsive to that. So it's been a plus out of all the COVID negatives. That's been a plus. Assist with crisis intervention efforts to provide insight into the development of functional assessments and behavior intervention plans. They are key in those teams, and that really wasn't reflected in the previous description. And then they participate in building or program activities and meetings as appropriate. Any questions about any of those aspects?
No, I think this is the opportune time to obviously get it updated where it needs to be. So
Yes.
I'm glad we can be a part of that.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes, ma'am. You're on mute, Paige.
Took it off, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Has this always been 187 days?
The days vary. They do have some extended days. And what we try to do, actually, we look at those days kind of annually to see how they need to be split. One of our school psychologists has done some heavy work with RTI, so she had some extra days built in. So we take that on an annual basis to see how they want to split those days, but they do have some extended days.
Does anybody else have any comments concerning the job description?
No.
Okay, seeing there are none, so we need a motion, please.
I make a motion that we approve the school psychologist for the school system.
Okay, as far as the job description, correct?
Oh, I approve this job description as presented by Ms. Ray.
Okay, all right, we need a second,
Second.
please.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the approval of the new job description for the school psychologist. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing there are none, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, seeing we had a very big day today, and I have to commend all of our staff and folks that jumped in. And I don't know, like I said, when I looked out my window this morning and this afternoon, it just seems so normal. And I hope it all went well. So Dr. McDonald, I'm going to turn this over to you, or who's doing this? I don't know.
I will. I was going to share a few numbers. So, okay, and I'm going to share my. So I hope that everyone can see. I just have a little spreadsheet that gives the board and community an idea of how many students we had in person and how many students have chose and their families have chose to stay virtual. So as you can see at Hogsett, we have 88% of our students that have chosen to stay or have chosen to attend in person. And then we have 12% that have chosen to stay virtual. At Tolliver, 84% in person, 16% virtual. And as you'll notice, as we move up in grades, we have more families that are choosing to stay virtual. At Bate, and if you'll notice at Bate Middle School and then at the high school, there are two different virtual options for families. If you'll remember when we started school, parents in 6th through 12th grade could choose either teacher-led distance learning, which is what we all think of as virtual in kind of the pandemic world, to where the teachers are having Google Meets and interacting with the students and teaching the lessons face-to-face in the way we're interacting currently at this board meeting. But then there was also the option of an independent virtual, where the students were in an online platform and they were self-paced, self-motivated, did that work, and an employee, one of our certified staff, one of our teachers, connected with that student to make sure they were on track, monitoring grades there if they needed help. But really the student was progressing through the work at their own pace. So usually a very self-motivated student that did that work. So at Bate, independent virtual, we have 1% of those students at Bate. So it's not a large number there at Bate. And that stayed the same. That still stayed at 1%. We have 75% choosing to be in person and 24% under the teacher-led virtual learning. And then at the high school, you can see how the numbers play out. 52% in person, 30% is the teacher-led virtual, and we have 18% that are working through that independent virtual. And at the high school, some of that independent virtual learning is dual enrollment. So they may be taking some of their classes at a community college, and they're already getting that college credit there. So we have a larger number than we've had in past years with those dual enrollment classes working in that this year, which is one positive outcome. If we can say we've had positives this year in the pandemic, one positive is in an increase there in that dual enrollment. Just a couple of things I'll let you know. I asked the principals if they wanted to shoot any information on what their numbers look like. So the numbers or the percentages that you have here was what we were expecting this morning with our students. Just a couple of things to note. Each school had a few students show up that had stated they were going to stay virtual, but they, over the weekend or towards the end of last week, changed their mind and decided to come back in person. So there was a slight shift in each school with a few students that showed up this morning and said, I really do want to be in person. And we had a few students that didn't show up this morning because they chose to stay virtual and maybe change their mind in the last few days. We had a few students that didn't show up, and each school made personal phone calls to see, what was going on there. And pretty much all of those said it was just a normal school situation of maybe the child was sick. And we had a couple that were in quarantine at home. So they'll be back in school in the next few days. Bate reported that out of their students that signed up to be in person, they had 96% attendance today. The other 4% was only about 11% of their students. They made individual calls to all those families, and they will be back in the next day or two. It was a sickness or some other reason that they were out today, which was good news. The high school was expecting around 250 kids. They had 228 today. And they had a couple of extra students that were virtual that switched. They made phone calls to all of those other students to make sure that everything was on track. And Hogsett had all but 10 students show up today, which is great. And they made 10 phone calls, and all of those students will be back in the next day or two. So good news there. High percentages at our two elementaries, which we were expecting. And I went to a couple of the schools, and I know Mrs. Satterley did as well, and things were looking good. The only hiccup I think that we had, which we always have the first couple of days at school, is a car rider backup line at Tolliver. So it just is not the ideal situation to drop off nearly 600 elementary students with traffic in that area. So we'll have some extra help out there in the morning to control traffic. But other than that, things went very, very good today. Any questions or anything to share? Shirley, would you like to add anything?
I have to find my unmute button. I was able to visit all 4 schools today, and I'm with Mr. Becker. It was so nice to have what felt like some normalcy. My own child was so excited he forgot to tell me bye this morning. So I hope that they were all that excited. They seemed excited. They seemed that excited to me. So it was a good day.
Well, I know it was a good day. This has been a day I've been waiting for a year. And, I know we had some folks riding the fence on whether we should be doing this or not. And it's a tough decision to make. Even though my granddaughter doesn't go to school here, I do know that virtual learning for her, even though she did very well with it, but it was a challenge. She wasn't with her friends, and she didn't have have that opportunity to socialize, and she became very isolated. And with her mom being a teacher, her mom couldn't even take her to school with her. I mean, it was a whole nother world that they had to deal with. And I just know how that entire family suffered because of this. But they're all educated. They all know how important education is, and they did everything that they had to do to make sure that she was able to participate and do what she needs to do and not get behind. So, but I just have nothing but praise that we're at this point. And I know we're going to have our challenges. I know this is not the perfect answer at this point, but I'm like you, Mrs. Satterley. I think that we got these kids in the building and they're excited, and basically it's the first day of school, and you guys did a great job, and I really appreciate that. So anybody else have any comments or questions? Mrs. Stevens, do you always remember the first day of schools? I can remember when you were principal, and I'm gonna have to brag on her. My kids all went through Bait, and I'll never forget. Mrs. Stevens made it a point. She signed every report card that went out of that building. And I can remember, and she was pretty honest. And I can remember one time, and I won't say his name, but he only had one son. And she wrote on there, "You could do a little better." But she also said, "You've had a great semester." So I was always so pleased when the kids brought home the report cards, because when Mrs. Stevens was there, she personalized it. And trying to do that for 400 kids had to be extremely tough. And so I do want to say that. I know it's been years that that's happened, but I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate principals. Seeing my wife was a principal for 4 years, and I know how hard a job that is. And so, like I said, thank you to everybody that made today possible, and it definitely will be much smoother tomorrow. Guarantee it. So Dr. McDonald, thank you for all your leadership on this. It's taken a lot. So, okay, let's move on to the ESSER2 funds and unfinished learning. This is also exciting news too. Dr. McDonald, are you doing this, or is Ms. Satterley doing it?
Well, we're going to tag team it. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Satterley to kind of add some information. So we're going to tag team this one. So I want to just start off by giving a reminder that under our ESSER2 funds, we received $2.7 million, which we're excited. It's a lot of funds, but really for us to be able to close that learning gap that this pandemic has caused, it's going to take it. But I first wanted to start by reminding everybody that out of that pot of money, we will be using it for all of the cost that we are still incurring around the pandemic. So we are still buying large quantities of hand sanitizer, wipes, gloves. We still have, PPE because we're back in school now. So our nurses are going to need that. So the face masks. So we still are having a lot of expenses due to a pandemic that a school district normally does not have. And so those items will, and those things will come out of that. Extra hours and overtime for some of our custodians, hours to do some extra evening cleaning and sanitizing and those things. So first off, all of that will still be coming out of this pot. But the majority of the funds and what we're going to focus on is really helping catch our students up. I mean, I think everyone knows that this has just been devastating to the academics for our students. And so we really want to focus that. And so we have, and I'm not going to say, I'm going to say Mrs. Satterley, our instructional coaches, our principals, and our teachers that have been working on this plan have really come up with a solid plan to help catch our students up. And so I'm going to share our plan from my screen, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Satterley to talk you through some of the things that we're working on and planning. So,
And please know that we are also still brainstorming of all possible ways that we could help to narrow this pandemic gap. And when we say pandemic gap, our winter math scores are coming in for the kids that we tested that were in person during hybrid. And I'm getting an update from the coaches tomorrow on what they plan to do now that we're back 5 days. But that unfinished learning from this pandemic gap we're seeing it in all kids, top to bottom. So these opportunities that I'm going to talk to you about aren't just for kids that are performing below grade level, because every kid needs to grow regardless of where they start at. So one of the things we're going to do, you see on your screen, drafted what we're calling an unfinished learning grant proposal. And it was a way to give some of this money to the schools, but they have some guidelines they have to follow to get it. It's not just, hey, here's this money, spend it. So you can see that the purpose of the grant, I'm not going to read off the screen to you, but is to encourage schools to provide additional time in core areas, especially reading and math, to students. So it's going to require them to be creative with their master schedules. It's going to require them to think about getting rid of things that may not be as instructional, if that makes sense, in place of adding some more rigorous instruction. And in order to be eligible to receive the funds that are outlined on the next pages, they have to meet the requirements that are set forth on the next few pages. They'll get 25% of it up front and then 75% with the completion of school year 22. And it says funds provided will be based on enrollment as of 3/1/21, but we actually backpedaled that and went back to the last day we were in school last year, because those are the kids that we're talking about. So other requirements that aren't outlined below, we are requiring that all teacher and school level administration professional growth plans have at least one goal that is academically related. They can have other goals, but we have to have a data-driven academic goal. We are saying that outside of 25 to 30-minute lunch period and related arts classes, and of course recess and things like that at the elementary school, that most of their time has to be focused on those 4 core areas. And then you can see down through there how we're going to monitor with school level walkthrough observations, district level walkthroughs, check-ins, analysis of universal screener data throughout the school year. And then you see a timeline for this. So that's the quick part. Here's the real meat of it. Dr. McDonald, if you'll scroll down just one page. Yep. Okay. So one of the ways that Danville High School, the first table you see is Danville High School. Danville High School can get, go back up just a little bit, sorry. Can get $50 per student if they screen all incoming students for next year, and if they place every student not at benchmark or below grade level in an extra block of math and or reading. You can scroll down now. And that's one that we are flexible on, because we know that a high school master schedule may not allow for every single one of those kids to have that third block in their master schedule. They might have to be creative and do things after school or do things on breaks. But so they have to screen them, and then they have to place them for $50 per student. And this is $50 per student enrolled, not just the ones that aren't at grade level. And then 90% of all students enrolled in an AP course will sit for the AP exam. That's $15 per student. We, just being in the interest of transparency, we have several students who take the AP class but do not sit for the exam. Not sure what the reasoning is, but we have a lot of kids who don't take the exam, and we are willing to use some of this money outside of this grant money, the other ESSER money, what's left over after this grant, to help pay for those exam fees if that's a barrier for some kids. Our 10th grade students are taking the ACT in April. If they have 90% of 10th grade students show up to take it, $15 more per student. If they have 100 students enrolled in dual credit courses next year, that's another $15 per student. Currently, they have 72 students enrolled in dual credit classes this school year. If they have 240 students enrolled in a CTE pathway next school year, another $15 per student. The current number is 228. Does anybody have any questions about the Danville High School requirements? And their total, if they did all the things and all the pieces based on their enrollment, would be $79,650.
So I think one thing to note too is in the principles talking about the 79,000 is not to help them do the things that is mentioned in the grant. Like the things that are mentioned in the grant will be paid for with the SR2 funds. This is additional money for that school to use to focus on unfinished learning. So for example, I know one of the schools is talking about using a portion of this funds to get some supplies that are needed to help close the gap. And then the other portion of the funds to hire a one-year interventionist to help catch students up during, next school year. So each principal is looking at these funds. It would be the funds that they would receive through doing these things would be on top of this. So the ESSER money would pay for this for the principals, and then each school would have this much to focus specifically on what the principal and the teachers in the building level folks see as these are some additional things we need to do, not just what the district's helping us with, but we see this is very specific for our building, and these funds are going to help us close those gaps with those things. And so the administration at the building level is still planning what that part looks like.
And those AP exam fees are a good example of that. Like, we want to help those students pay for that exam if that's the barrier, but it will not come out of that $79,000. It will come out of the additional ESSER money because it's 2.7 million. So 79,000 doesn't get the whole 2.7 million, obviously.
Mrs. Satterley?
Yes, ma'am.
If a student needs to take additional reading and or math, will those be credit bearing classes? Will that impact graduation?
Yes, they will be. And we are bound by state law to somewhat do that with seniors, where we have a college and career readiness, math and English, and it's credit bearing as well.
Okay.
We're expanding it 9 through 12 instead of just seniors with this. Okay, so we can move on to BATE. You can see that on BATE, all students, not just those that aren't at grade level, all students will be enrolled in at least 75 minutes or a double block of reading and math. Every single one of BATE's 400 students will at least be getting 20 extra minutes of reading and math next year, but it looks to be more. So they get $110 per kid if they make that work in their master schedule. If you scroll down just a little bit more, Dr. McDonald, they have to also, for $50 per student, participate in at least 4 weeks, and they're not limited to 4 weeks. And this is another example of where that cost is not going to come out of their dollar amount. It's going to come out of the ESSER money at the district level. The cost for these unfinished learning camps are going to come out of that ESSER money. So they have to do at least 4 weeks of summer learning, spring break learning, after school learning, Saturday learning, any free minute they have. We are encouraging them to use to catch these kids up. And if BATE does those things, which I'll go ahead and say that all 4 principals are super excited about this, BATE's bottom dollar will be $68,320. Okay, we'll move on to Tolliver. Tolliver and Hogsett are both, they're similar. Their dollar amounts are just different because of the number of students. Tolliver and Hogsett both will be adding 30 minutes to reading and math for every student. Every single student will get 30 more minutes of reading and writing and math. And they also have to participate in at least 4 weeks of those unfinished learning opportunities. Tolliver's total is $89,440 and Hogsett's total is $67,040. And so that is a small drop in the bucket of that 2.7 million. But this is a way for schools to do what we all know they need to do to help address these gaps, but get a little bit of a reward for it too. And they can use those funds how they wish to use them.
And so one of the key components is if you just look at the last piece with Bate, Tolliver, and Hogsett, you see that it talks about at least 4 weeks of some type of unfinished learning camp. All of our principals were wanting to do these things anyway. They were wanting to do the camps. In fact, most of them were talking about more than 4 weeks in the summer, or 4 weeks in the summer paired with these other things. And of course, the funds for those summer camps, for the after school camps this fall, for all of those things would come out of the ESSER funds as well. And since we don't have those things planned, we don't have totals yet, on what it's going to be, and we're working on it. I mean, we're still in the early stages on this. And so one of the things that I think is important is that it's going to take our staff to really, work with us to do this and provide this. And that's a lot of extra work on staff that are already doing a lot during a pandemic. And so I'm going to jump into this piece too, but the next item on the agenda that we'll talk about next is looking at salary scale for the unfinished learning. So currently, our certified staff get $25 an hour, whether it's summer or after school, and our classified staff are paid $12.50 an hour for after school hours or summer work. And so one of the things we would like to do, which would also be from the ESSER funds, is to increase the certified from 25 to 30 and the classified from $12.50 to $15, not for all the time, just for this unfinished learning work, for the work that is coming from the ESSER 2 funds, for the work that is to help catch our students up on these gaps that they've received due to the pandemic. And so we would want that salary scale for what we're going to call the unfinished learning. And so that'll be the next thing, but just wanted you to know that that's in there too, because this is only as successful as, how we're able to get our staff to help us through this. And they're already doing a lot. So we want to make sure that we compensate them for that as well. So Mrs. Satterley, is there anything else on that piece that you want to add? Or
I would just say, and these are not our only options. Dr. McDonald and I are actually attending a think tank that's 3 hours long tomorrow with our local educational cooperative with other districts, just to throw around ideas and see what other districts are doing to address the learning loss. And I think the least we can do for our staff with this money is compensate them for their time. And so the $30 and $15, I think it's a good give for us to ask for them at this time to put in that much extra time. Because it's just been a rough year.
Well, and this would be beyond their contract anyways, correct? So, I mean,
Yes.
and we would normally pay additional funds regardless during the summer if it needs to be. One thing I wanted to ask quickly, I didn't see any kind of parent component. Will there be, or can you all figure up some opportunities, even if you bring the parents in for lunch or a snack, or this is what your child's been doing and we can show off the work that they've accomplished? And I think that if we can get the parent component in there, especially during the summer, will have a high impact on their children to know that they're going to come to school and see my work. If you all could just brainstorm on that, I don't think it has to be a huge deal.
Some of the things that we've been talking about as far as these unfinished learning opportunities that are outside of school hours go is we have trouble, like with after school ESS or with any summer opportunity. Sometimes we have trouble getting the kids to come. And so we talked about we're brainstorming ways to make it more attractive. And I kind of thought, hey, let's go back to, you remember Danville Kids University. It was on a Saturday morning for 4 hours, but every single kid wanted to come because of what it was and how much fun it was. And we just have to really think outside the box, which we all are aware that we have to think outside the box on how to make this be something that they want to do. So that we are, and that there's a parent piece to that as well. So we are thinking about those things.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it does remind me of those of you who've been around for the Danville Kids University, that was a remarkable program that was put together, and we did it for years and years. And unfortunately, I guess we just ran out of funding for it, which is always a sad note, but it was very successful. And you're right, there were many Saturdays that I showed up and as a board member and was able to see these kids were so enthusiastic. I just wish we could do that on Monday mornings for them. I don't know. But anyways, but I also know there was a parent component in there too. And so now will we be providing transportation?
So we have talked about that as well, and we're in the early stages of planning this out, but we have discussed providing transportation for all these pieces as well. So yes, that's in there. And we would, Mrs. Satterley and I will be glad to update the board again next month on this because like I said, we're in the early stages and there are so many pieces. If you as board members think of something even after this meeting, shoot us an email and like, hey, did you think about this? We're taking all the feedback we can as we plan through this. Just like Mrs. Satterley said, tomorrow is kind of a think tank brainstorm as well. So definitely we kind of know where we're headed. You saw the high level, but there's so much detail that we still have to work out. So glad to bring this back again next month and discuss more details, but also glad to take feedback and any ideas that anybody has and definitely the parent piece. And we have also talked about the transportation as well. So.
Well, I think it's exciting and you guys are getting the groundwork done, and I'm sure you'll get inundated with, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? Of course, sometimes you just can't do all of it. But does any other board members have any comments or they'd like to make? Mr. Stanfield, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Glad you're here with us. All right, if there aren't any questions or comments at this point, we're going to move on. Let's get to the vaccine participation update. I asked Dr. McDonald to do this. I know probably statistically, it's probably the same as it was last time when people got their first shots, but I've been asked about it. And I just thought we should get another report. And so anyways, floor is yours, Dr. McDonald.
Yeah, so this will be a quick and I guess a short update. As everyone knows, we've had the second round of vaccine. We're 10 days out from round 2. So, I've seen 7 days, I've seen 2 weeks, but I think that everyone that chose to participate in the vaccine with Danville schools, we're in a nice place at this point. So it's really great. We had through the vaccine, through the school district, through the Danville County Health Department, 70% of our staff choose to take the vaccine, and we had all the individuals back for their second shot. Our percentage of staff is a little bit higher than 70%, but due to HIPAA law, we can't ask our staff if you've had the vaccine. We have had some staff say, I went to the UK Kroger Field vaccine clinic. I've had a couple of other staff say, yes, I've received my vaccine, first and second shot someplace else. So I know our number is slightly higher than 70%. I just cannot give the exact percentage because I'm not able to, and don't want to invade privacy of staff that have chose to do the vaccine someplace else. So we're somewhere slightly over 70% at this time.
Well, I think it's fantastic, and again, it was well done, and just to let folks know, board members could get their vaccines. It was interesting how it was done. So I was asked why board members were able to do that. Mr. Ball got his through VA. We were put on a supplemental list. So we were last in consideration on getting the vaccines. And I felt that was fair. There's been some criticism of boards throughout the state that kind of got, some people thought special treatment, and it really wasn't, but it was perceived that way. But working it out with Dr. McDonald, we were put on a supplemental list. So we did not take the place of someone who maybe would have signed up for the shot and didn't get it because we got ours. That's just not how it worked. And so it worked out very smoothly, and it was something greatly appreciated by me and I know some other board members. So thank you.
Yeah, and I can add to that to help explain that. So
Sure.
board members and one or two other individuals that were connected with the district were on a waiting list. And so our staff signed up, and every staff member that signed up, we received all the doses for every staff member that signed up. When we got to the date of our first dose, we had some staff members through other means received a vaccine, or maybe they had went someplace else. And so we had a handful that, the day before, the day of, had said, oh, I got my vaccine 2 days ago someplace else. And so that meant that we had a few extra. And as I think everybody probably knows at this point, the vaccines have to be used within a certain, within a few hours of the vials being opened. And so those vials were opened. And so as we got towards the end of the day, when we were doing those vaccines, the health department was like, we will have this many that we have to give them out so they're not wasted. And so then we made calls to the board members and a couple of other individuals that are connected and work, with our staff, and we're able to get those. So it was a situation of, you're on a waiting list, and either, the health department had to give that shot or it would be wasted. And so I think it was that way across the state. And so anyway, glad that all of those shots were given and nothing was wasted. So.
Well, and I have to agree. I want a total transparency on this. It could have been the day that it all started. We wouldn't have gotten the vaccines. It was very possible that may not have happened if there was 100% participation. So I just felt like that it was a nice thing to be able to offer, and it was good outcome. It was all well done, and so greatly appreciate all the staff and those who were involved in pulling that off. And the health department again did an excellent job, and in fact it was amazing. How well both of those sessions went. So thank you to all that were involved in that. So Dr. McDonald, thank you for that report. Let's move on to some business that I just feel like that our public needs to know. We've had a settlement a couple of years ago with Wausau Paper concerning an overpayment of taxes. And now we're confronted with the same type of situation with Corning, overpayment of taxes. And to let the public know, the school district does not determine what the tax was. That's determined elsewhere. Corporations have a right to appeal and say that they've paid too much. The school district has no say in this. It is all done out of Frankfurt. And so when you start getting decisions that are going to cost your school district $700,000 or more, and we have no control over those funds, but we do have to pay it back. And so I wanted Dr. McDonald to go over the numbers, especially for board members that may not be aware of this. I will say about Wausau, they were willing to work with the school district, and we were able to make payments based upon getting it paid off over a couple of years or so. So far, we've met a lot of resistance from Corning, and their demand basically could be over $500,000 or $250,000 to start with at one time. Can the district afford it? Yes, we can afford it. Should the district complain a little bit? I think it should be a lot. This is something that comes out of the General Assembly, comes out of the Revenue Department. We absolutely have no say on this. So anyways, I've asked Dr. McDonald to put the numbers together concerning both entities so that our stakeholders and public needs to know what we're up against, and it isn't just us. This happens all over the state. And it's really hard. Ask Mrs. Osborne, this is really difficult to put a budget together and then get these rulings that come down, and we have to make accommodations for them. But thankfully, with our leadership, we're in very good financial condition, and it does hurt. I mean, I look at $500,000. That's like 8 or 9 teachers that we could be paying instead of a refund. So anyways, whoever's going to do the report, please jump in. Okay, Mrs. Osborne, thank you.
In 2020, I don't know if you remember or not, that year was when we sat down with the folks from Wausau and set up a payment plan. We agreed to pay 6 payments of $55,785.41. As of today, we have made 3 of those 6 payments. We make number 4 July 15th, and then we'll have next year, 2022, January 15th and July 15th, and we'll have Wausau paid off. So we're getting there. As far as Corning, of course, like Mr. Becker said, these corporations self-report. We don't have anything to do with that. When they make a mistake and they find it, they turn it into the Department of Revenue, and we have to pay it back. For 2018, we're going to owe Corning $242,432.22. That's just for 2018. That's right at $250,000. So we still have 2019 and 2020 we're expecting to have to pay back. I talked with, I forgot her name, Rochelle Eisman. She is a liaison with the Corning Corporation. She didn't make me any promises of any kind. She led me to believe they're expecting all the money up front. So just based on what little she told me, there wouldn't be a payment plan option, but I'm still hopeful. So any questions?
I mean, just because she said that, does that make it the truth?
Well, we've asked Mr. Pennington to help us out a little bit with negotiations on a payment plan, and so that is literally the fresh off the presses news. So we're gonna go with the assumption that we are still going to try to do a payment plan, and so we will get Mr. Pennington to help us moving forward with negotiations.
And we all need to realize that it isn't just the matter that we're paying it back, is that we will never see those dollars again. So they overpaid, the ruling was in their favor, but instead of us collecting $250,000 from them, we're now going to get a very small check compared to what we were getting. So it isn't just what we're paying back, it's also the future income that we're losing. And you start putting in $250,000 every year for year and year and year, it can get into the millions of dollars that the school district will no longer have. And that's been a real concern of mine. We are in a good financial situation to where funds can be paid. it would be so much better if we can get some community support from these corporations to realize that it's a big hit on our budget, and that hopefully there's some willingness on their part to at least work with us. And so we've asked Mr. Pennington to intercede on that, and hopefully we can get that worked out. Any other board members have any concerns or questions? Okay. All right. Like I said, it's not good news, but it's something that I wanted the board to be completely aware of, and also for our stakeholders to know that this is also going on. So, like I said, it's not going to break the bank. But it just makes it very hard to do a budget when you have these unexpected expenses that come up that are of no fault of ours. So I do appreciate your all's work on this. Thank you. The next item it would be the items that will be on the consent agenda. We have an unpaid leave request. We have a request that we do every year for project graduation, which we usually donate 2 Chromebooks. And then there's some things with yearbook, fundraisers, and so forth. So that'll be on next week's agenda. And if you have any questions on those, and possibly there could be some other things added on the consent agenda, but we'll know that ahead of time. So any questions on that from anyone? Okay. All right. So now we're at item number 14, which is adjournment. Do we have a motion, please? Okay, I'll make the motion. Go ahead, Wade.
I'll make the motion at this time for adjournment.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and many seconds. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?